We ready? Am I on? Ooh, I can hear it. All right. I was given the cue that we're going to go ahead and get started. So if we come in and before we get started, for me personally, the most important thing is I got to start with a prayer. So if y'all bow your head with me. God, thank you for today. Father, thank you for this country. Thank you for this state. Thank you for this county and this town and this church. Thank you for this family. Father, thank you that I get to be here. Father, thank you that we just have the freedom to be here. Father, I pray that today specifically, I pray that I say nothing apart from what you would want said. And ultimately, everybody would hear what you want them to hear. I ask that for myself, and I ask that for all the people that are in this service today. Father, I ask this in Jesus' powerful name. Amen. Okay. Good morning. So y'all are kind of in trouble because when I asked, I said, they said, what would you teach? And of course, I said, what am I supposed to teach on? They're like, well, kind of whatever. And I was like, So there's not like a theme. I don't have any guidelines here. There's nobody kind of looking over. Like, no, whatever you want. I was like, okay. So I was given a book a while ago by my dad. It's called Unoffendable. It's written by a guy named Brant Hansen. Now, if you haven't heard of this book, I'm barely going to graze this book. We could do a big study on this book. And we plan on doing it in my class. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do it here. It's going to be a bit high level. But it's really kind of two parts. It's Brant Hansen. We're going to do some offendable. For me, I've kind of titled this, it's Surrendered Anger and Unconventional Love. Now we're going to, today, because we're going to keep doing this for a while, today we're going to do the surrendered anger part, and then later on I'll come back and I'm going to do the unconventional love part. But anyway, we're going to get into this. So up on the slide you see, there's a guy named Dallas Willard. He's a Christian philosopher, and he said, anger is the most fundamental problem in human life. And this really hit me because I'm telling you, I work in Fort Worth, so I drive all the time. I listen to audiobooks. I have listened to this audiobook at least 3 times, and I make myself go back and listen to it again periodically because it's just good stuff. And if you look at what's taking place in our nation right now, anger. People are so angry. And it's one of those that, especially here in the church, and it's so funny, we get into this, well, we need anger. Sometimes you just don't get things done if you're not angry. I can't find that in the Bible. So y'all are my scholars here. So when this is over, by all means, come text me, talk to me. You tell me where you found the contrary, because I can't. So where we go? So I just got a bunch of Bible verses, and we're going to go through them. Oh, you do? Oh, sweet. For me, I have to start out with definitions, right? Because words matter, and we don't get to make up our own definitions. So I'm going to start out, what is anger? Okay, so anger is a strong feeling of displeasure and usually of antagonism. Okay, antagonism, it's the opposition of a conflicting force. So anger, a strong feeling of displeasure, usually from the opposition of a conflicting force. Somebody's opinion difference, right? That's what we're talking about. Somebody does something that you don't like. Somebody says something that you don't like. That causes this anger inside of us. And to get started, I'm not going to tell you don't get angry. That's not the purpose of this. We're going to talk about how we deal with the anger. Righteous. Acting in accord with divine or moral law. Sin. Transgression, means violation of that law of God. And then finally, surrender. To give up completely or agree to forgo, especially in favor of another. So, surrendering anger is what I'm going to talk about today. Big picture. What we're talking about is, it's the presumption that I am entitled to be angry with someone, and I have the right to lash out, right? And lash out, whether that's verbally, Facebook, right? I've got the right to do that. So, and again, because we're going to go, we're talking about this with God's law, so let's just start off at the beginning, Jesus' commandment to us. The great commandment, Matthew 22, 37 through 40. The Pharisees are talking to Jesus, right? And they're going to trap him. because they know the law. So he says, teacher, what's the greatest? What's the greatest commandment? And he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. He says, this is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Okay, so that's what Jesus says. So now let's get into the Bible. And let's talk about, we've heard righteous anger, right? That's a good one, right? Well, no, I had righteous anger. Okay, so righteous anger is a recent addition to certain Bible translations. It's not in the original. There's no righteous anger for humans, okay? It's just not in there. I can't find it. Paul. So let's talk about, I'm going to go through what different people say. Here's what Paul says about it. So Ephesians 4:26, and it's ultimately 26 through 31. He says, in 26 he says, in your anger, do not sin. Okay, right there. Paul said, I can get angry. I'm just not supposed to sin. Okay, well, let's zoom out a little bit, and let's look at the rest of the paragraph. In 49, he says, okay, do not let unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. Now, when it says talk, we're talking about communication. So there's no loophole for communication when it's talking about talking, right? Sign language, texting, Facebooking, driving down the road, right? Well, I didn't say it out loud. No, you're communicating, right? So do not let any unwholesome talk come out of you, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. Ephesians 4:31, he goes on to say, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger. So, in your anger do not sin, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger. So we're starting off with, I'm not looking so good here, according to Paul, about hanging on to my anger, right? Okay, let's see what he says. Because it doesn't really make sense to use verse 26 as your platform for anger justification and then skip the rest of the paragraph, right? We don't really get to do that. Context, context, context. So then Paul, okay, let's see, maybe somewhere else he says it. Well, Colossians 3:8. But now you must also rid yourself of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. Now, why is it that we tend to add unless to anger, but not the rest of those, right? No, but I was angry. Don't say that in anger unless, we don't do it to the others. Rid yourself of filthy language, unless cursing is the only way to get your point across, right? We don't say that, right? Rid yourself of slander, unless you really need to destroy that person by spreading a lie. You need to take them down a peg. Well, that's crazy. So why is it that we do that with anger? Okay, maybe Paul got it wrong. Let's look at somebody else. Let's see what James says, right? See James. So James 1:20, and he says, human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Righteousness, acting in accord with divine law. Our anger does not produce that. It's not looking so good. Well, maybe James got it wrong too. Let's look at Solomon, right? Solomon, pretty smart guy, had some wisdom given to him by God. I'm sure he's going to set us straight. Ecclesiastes 7:9. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit. Well, surely somebody can get angry. Yeah, he can. He goes on to say, anger resides in the lap of fools. So there's your loophole. If you put your hand up and go, I'm a fool, now I can be angry, right? That's the only loophole I'm seeing here so far. So then let's go on and take a look. Let's see what Jesus says. Let's talk about his teaching. Let's see what Jesus tells others to do. Matthew 5:44. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. He doesn't go on to say, after you've punched them in the face, or after you've slammed them on Facebook, right? #smote, right? It's not what it says. Pray for your enemy, or love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. There's no easier way. Look at the world right now. That's what we do. We thrive on it. We thrive on negativity. The media thrives on negativity. And it is so easy to get absorbed into that. It is so easy when someone's talking about what some genius in Somerville County did, some law, some new thing. Boy, it's quick and it's, well, I'm in my house, I'm at my laptop, I'm safe here, I can blast away. It's not what it says we're supposed to do. Okay, let's go on. 5:22. So now Jesus is speaking about murder, right? He's talking about murder, killing someone, taking a human life. And he says, but I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Jesus assigns the same punishment to anger as he does murder. It's the same. It's black and white, right? It's binary. This isn't looking too good for us, right? Okay. We go on, and when Jesus is talking, he says, when you pray, pray like this, right? We talk about the Lord's Prayer. And we go into the Lord's Prayer, and he says, and we say, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. I would submit that my debt to Jesus is, there's no words to describe the magnitude of difference between what I owe and what somebody could have possibly done to me. So when I'm sitting there praying the Lord's Prayer, and I'm saying, please forgive me for my sins, please, as I forgive those who trespass against me. You guys remember the unmerciful servant, right? Matthew 18:21. Unmerciful servant's handed over. Jesus says, you know, he goes into the master says, I tell you what, I'm going to forgive you this big debt that you owe me. And the guy's happy, and he runs out, and he goes, what does he do? He runs to somebody else, and he's like, you owe me money. Master comes back, says, well, you know, if that's the way it's going to be. And he says, the unmerciful servant was, quote, handed over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all that he owed. And then Jesus goes on to say, now this is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart. This isn't a flippant, no, I forgive you, and then you harbor that, and we bring it back. That's not what he's saying. You forgive from your heart. Do you want to pay back what you owe God? Or do you want Jesus to cover that debt? I don't want to pay for that. I'm terrified of the thought of paying for my daily compounded sin that I owe. But I've got to, right? Okay. So that's what Jesus says. Well, you know, what we say and what we do. You know, I tell my kids all the time, I'm a master of, you should do this and you should do that. You know, do what I say, not what I do. Well, here's Jesus in action. I love this. John 13:37 through 14:4. So, you know, we see two different chapters and we see the break, but in the original, there's no separate chapters, right? That was added in later on so we could find pages. So this is all one stretch, even though you get to the end of 13. So it's this bittersweet last meal that Jesus is getting to have with his closest, with those closest to him. So you can imagine your last meal with your kids, and you're trying to enjoy the moment, and you're taking in the sights and the sounds, and you're yearning to just pass along. What is the most important thing I've got to say? What is it I have to convey? This is it. This is my shot. So you can imagine the frustration and the everything that's going on right now. And it says 13:21. Don't think that Jesus wasn't upset and didn't recognize this. 13:21. Jesus was troubled in spirit. He's troubled because he's about to fulfill Scripture and name his betrayer. And how did he do it? He dips the bread in the bowl. He slides it over. He gives it to Judas, and he says, what you're about to do quickly. That's it. There's no lecture. There's no shaming. Shaming. Ooh, we're good at shaming. That's going to be in my next one. I'm going to talk about some shaming. He didn't shame him. What you're about to do quickly. And don't, we go, oh, well, Judas was possessed, right? It wasn't Judas, it was the devil. Remember, it wasn't until he took the bread that Satan entered him. All the stuff that he had done before then, that was on him. That was all him. And Jesus knew this. So he does this, hands it, what you got to do, go do quickly. Judas gets up and he leaves. Jesus resets. He looks at the group and he says in 34, "A new command I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." This is one of the many examples of why we are not Jesus, because no human could do this. And there's Johnny on the spot, Simon Peter, ready to run his mouth, right? First of all, it says, the one that Jesus loved is sitting next to him, and he says, somebody's going to betray him, and there's Simon Peter, and it says he looked across and goes, "Hey, ask him who he's talking about." Right? And then he goes on to say, "But Lord, why can't I follow you? I will lay down my life for you." And what's Jesus' reply? "Will you really? Truly, I tell you, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Again, you've got a betrayer that's just left, and you've got Peter who's always running his mouth. I mean, there's just patience with Peter. It's awesome. And this is the next part. This is what I like, because it doesn't stop there. It goes on. Jesus continues. He stops and he says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. See, my Father's house has many rooms. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you with me. You know the way to the place I'm going." I just love that scene. There's a lady, Brene Brown, and she writes this book called, it's like The Power of Vulnerability, also a very good book. So she's a scientist, right? She's studying all the brain stuff that takes place, and she deals with shame and anger and all this other stuff. One of the things she said in her study was, she said, when people are shamed, feel shame, that's when we shame others, right? And that's that frustrating moment when you can't change the circumstances you're in, and you really want to get out of them because you're like, I didn't cause this, but I can't get out of it. And that's when your kid says something. That's when your neighbor pops in. That's when something happens, and the first thing that we do is we shame others. We were in Austin a few weeks ago, and I was at the H-E-B in Bee Cave trying to go left. Just going to pull left. I was in the turn lane. I wasn't in the wrong, but I could not pull out. Traffic just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And just when you're watching the line of cars build up behind you, and I'm like, oh, I'm that guy. And I'm not doing anything wrong, but I'm the guy. Right then, this lady pulls in her car, and she was scared of driving, didn't think she could make it. I guess she thought I was too far over. She pulls up and stops. So now, traffic is backing up on a 55-mile-an-hour road because of her, and she's just sitting there looking at me. And I roll down the window, and I'm like, you can make it. You can make it. And she's just shaking her head. And I'm like, I can't help you. I can't do anything. From the back seat, I got all the kids, because we're on our way to Papa and GC's house. I got all the kids. Of course, it's a 2.5-hour drive. Kids are, being kids in the back seat. Braden says, Dad, you know what you should do? Dad, here's where you messed up. Dad, you should have done, and Braden. Not now, buddy. Daddy's frustrated. Not now. I don't want to hear it. I need you to sit back there and be quiet. I looked in the rearview mirror, and you just see him. And my insides just go, ugh. Great. Good job, Ben. Good job. That's how it happens, and it happens that fast. You're not going to question my love for my son, right? I love Braden. And yet, I got frustrated in that moment, and I lashed out. It happens. And here's Jesus at the Last Supper, this last time, and he's got a betrayer, and he's got a big mouth. And he never loses his cool. He doesn't just tell us what to do, he shows us what to do. That's cool. Okay, so why can't I have righteous anger? Why not? Well, the reason is I've got a deceptive heart. Okay, well, what about God and Jesus? They get angry, right? John 2:13 through 17. Jesus cleared the temple courts. And not only that, it says he fashioned the rope together. That had to take a minute, right? Maybe that was, I don't know. I'm not Jesus. But, maybe that was his counting to 10. I don't know. But what I know is he got angry. And there was action because of it. But guess what? Here's the thing. He's Jesus. I'm not. See, God and Jesus, their character allows them to have anger and vengeance also. Ours doesn't. See, we stand as guilty as the person who is the target of our anger. And that's a tough pill to swallow, right? See, our own hearts deceive us. See, from the book of Ben, chapter 1, verse 2, I am right because I'm me, and you're wrong because you're not me. See, I'm a smart guy. I'm a good guy. I work hard at being a good guy. So I know what's right and what's wrong and when I'm justified, And if I tell you you're wrong, it's because I'm right and you're not me. That's not really the right answer, right? Let's see what Solomon says. Let's go back to Solomon. Proverbs 16:2, talking about the deceptive heart. All a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. Solomon was aware that we think we're doing right. We genuinely do. I talked to my dad a while ago and I said, you know what I think? I think I'm going to do this, and I think I'm going to do that, and I think I'm going to do this, talking about my future, right? I'm going to get done with nursing school, and then, maybe I'll do nurse practitioner, and maybe when the kids are out of the house, maybe I'll go back to medical school, because I want to go back to medical school because I want to donate my time to heal others. I genuinely believe that's true. But you know what? There's that other side that doctors make a lot of money. How do I know why I want to go back? Really deep down. I can tell myself something. I'm telling you, my superpower is justification. I pull this shirt off, I got the J and the cape. I can justify anything, right? And Amazon knows this. I can tell. I log in, see the daily deals, and they're like, Ben knows. And I look at that, and I'm like, oh, Amazon's reading my diary, So I can justify whatever. We all can. And that's the thing, and that's what he's telling us. We think that we're doing the right thing. We'll see what Paul says. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 4:3-5, he says, I don't even judge myself. My conscience is clear, but that doesn't make me innocent. It's the Lord who judges me. So therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes. That means we're not here to judge the other people. And here's what it comes down to. My heart is not deceptive because it fools other people. It's deceptive because it fools me. That's tough to know that even within my own chest, I deceive myself. Satan has just got an infinite capabilities of manipulating me and lying to me, and even when I think I'm doing the right thing. So let's apply a little logic to this. So, according to Paul and Solomon, if I don't know myself, then how can I know somebody else? Right? And if I can't know somebody else, then I can't know why they're saying and doing the things that they're doing. I don't know them. Empathy. Empathy is something else I'm going to talk about on the next one. Empathy is such a powerful tool. What is it that they're going through? What is their background? What's their experience? We don't know that. So when that person posts that thing, when you see the news media article and the interview, that's taken place, and you hear that person saying that thing that you're going, That's bananas. What? That didn't make sense. Well, it does to them. That's their background. The path that they've had has led them, has molded them, and made them to be the person that they are. And they believe they are just as right as you believe you're right. So how do we don't? We don't, and that's the point. We don't know. When you, in the book, Hansen talks about, he says, go to an airport and you listen to people's stories, right? And he says, and this is true. You think about this. Think about it at work. Think about it anywhere. When you listen to other people's stories, what do you hear more often? You hear the stories where people talk about how someone has done them wrong, or do you hear about how they've wronged other people? I don't hear those very often. Not many people. It's not as interesting or as fun to sit there and talk with your coworkers and talk about, I messed up yesterday. Boy, I messed up. You know, we can do that with our closest friends. But we don't do that in general. But it's fun to talk about how the neighbor, the whoever, the person on Facebook, oh, I'm going to tell you what they did, and they owe me an apology. Right? See, we're geniuses at justifying our rightness and others' wrongness. That's a gift that that's part of who we are. So then what's our calling? Our calling is to love. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. So we're called to love. What is love? Well, it's patient. It's kind. It doesn't envy. It doesn't boast. It's not proud. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrong. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always preserves. You can't preserve, hope, protect when you're blasting somebody on Facebook. That's not preserving. That's not protecting. Right? I just need to get my point across. Right? I'm just going to say what I got to say, and then I'll stop saying it. That's not the way it works. So does that mean we can't say anything? Right? Oh, great. Now, Ben, I can't say anything. I never get mad. I can't say anything. No, it's not the case. Jesus gives us a 3-step plan. Right? It's awesome. He tells us how to deal with it. Step 1, if your brother or sister sin, go and point out their fault. Just between the two of you. Right? Not the two of you and everyone on Facebook who might happen to see. That's not what it says. That's a face-to-face conversation. We have the power, the ability, we've been given the freedom to address wrongdoing, but in love, not in anger, and not on social media. Doesn't say that. Step 2, okay, so they didn't listen to me, right? Say they did. They did. They listened to you. Thank you very much. Life goes on. Awesome. Say they didn't. Okay, well, you move on to step 2, right? Step 2. If they will not listen, take 1 or 2 others along. Again, still no Twitter involvement. Still not in there. Still didn't work. Step 3. They still refuse to listen. Tell it to the church. Not on the FBC Facebook page. It's not how it works. I don't even know. Can we post on that page, Jennifer? Oh, there you go. So there you go. I'm going to run out of time. That's good. I wasn't sure. I had 3 pages into this thing. So my 2 cups of coffee, I was talking a little fast. So I always do mine at the end. I call it my food for thought. So my food for thought. What's our problem? Our problem is, as Christians, we don't get immunity from anger. It's unfortunate. We get made new. We are a new creature. And that is wonderful. But we are still subject to our bodies. That's our problem. We don't get immunity from anger. And like a weed, it's going to occasionally spring up inside us. But like a weed, we have to remove it and work to prevent future breakouts. It's a work that takes place. It's an active thing that we have to do. See, we're not called to justify our anger. Let me talk about how a way I can spin this, right? I am so mad. How can I say something, do something, and make it okay? It's not about justification, right? It's about elimination. We're called to get rid of the anger. See, and here's the other part, and this is what gets me. Anger is an emotion. It's not critical thinking. We're not thinking when we're angry. In fact, there's different sections of the brain that light up when this takes place, because some of the same places that get activated when real anger sets in are some of the same parts of the brain that get activated during trauma. That's the way the body sees it. It's pretty interesting. So there are parts of the brain that just, the thinking part, that just tend to want to shut down. But that's not critical thinking. It's an emotion. So then what's our charge? We stand in the gap. We are here to defend the defenseless and protect the vulnerable with love, not with anger. Right? Think about it. The best police officers and soldiers do their jobs without anger. There are examples in the news of police officers who do their job out of anger. It happens. But the best ones don't. The best soldiers enforce the law without anger. You messed up. That's what you did. I have to take you to jail. That's my job. It's not personal. It's the same with us. I am going to offend people. In fact, Hansen says at the beginning, he said the first time someone came to him and said at a conference, he said, it's possible to be unoffendable. He says, I was a little offended. I'm going to make people mad. I'm going to make my wife mad. If she was here, she'd tell you. But we got to get rid of it. And then we deal with each other in love. And, Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Right? It's hard to blast somebody on social media and being humble at the same time because we're getting our point across. That's not what we're here to do. And adding in love to the end of your story doesn't justify your actions, right? When you're talking about it later, I told her a good mother would never do that, but I told her in love. I cared about her. That's not the way it works. It's a sacrifice. That's what we're here to do. It's a sacrifice. Romans 12:1. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Getting rid of anger is a sacrifice to God. It's a sacrifice because it strikes at pride, right? It forces us to not talk about being humble. It makes us be humble. My last point is this. Keep in mind, grace is not for the deserving. I don't deserve it. The definition of grace is the free, unmerited gift. I was given a free, unmerited gift in salvation. And when I see that anger rising in me because someone said something to me, my thought has to be, of course they don't deserve it, but I'm going to give it to them anyways. That's all I have, people. Like I said, it's a little bit short. So I'm going to end in a prayer. And if y'all bow with me. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come and your will be done on earth, just like it is in heaven. Father, please give me this day my daily bread as I depend on it. Father, please forgive me for my sin as I forgive those who trespass against me, knowing that they are not the same. Father, please keep me from temptation and keep evil from me. Father, yours is the kingdom, Yours is the power. Yours is the glory forever. Father, thank you for this opportunity to share. Again, I pray that not me, but your words were heard. Father, I pray for this church family, for those here, for those at home, for those traveling. I pray for their health. I pray for their safety, for their kids, for their kids' kids. I pray for all those in this community. Father, most of all, I thank you for grace. In Jesus' powerful name I pray, amen. Thank you all.